For the dozen days, Snow Charmer had hunted a lot of primitive creatures. Since Hansen could not finish all the food himself, he piled the food up, wanting to sell it after he got out. Who knows that the golden crab was so shameless that it came to take some every day, treating Hansen's place as its kitchen. Damn you, crab. I must get straight with you today. Hansen had tolerated its behaviors for days and felt he should be on the same level as the golden crab in terms of fitness. So, he planned to try to kill it, getting the Crystal Palace back. As usual, the golden crab came to Hansen to steal the meat again. When it turned away, Hansen used his claws to hit the crab's shell. The golden crab quickly reacted. It threw away the 2 fish it had taken. Flipping itself around, it shot its pincer at Hansen's claws. Ding! The pincer hit the claws and sounded like metal. Hansen stepped back 3 times before he could stabilize himself. The golden crab also fell back. They were about on the same level judging from this round. Seeing that his strength was no weaker than the golden crab, Hansen felt overjoyed and waved his claws again. However, this time, Hansen did not hit the golden crab head on, but walked around it using kiting skills. Very soon, Hansen found an opportunity to hit the crab hard on its shell. However, the claws only left 3 shallow marks on the golden shell and did not crush it. So hard, after fighting for more than half an hour, Hansen made several hits on the golden crab, but only shallow marks were left. The crab was not hurt for real. Hansen took his claws back and decided to use his fists to fight the golden crab. When hitting the golden crab, he secretly used the yin force. However, since the yin force only penetrates 3 to 4 inches, Hansen could not really hurt the crab if he was hitting at the wrong spot. Boom! Hansen found an opportunity to hit the golden crab on its head. Suddenly, he saw the golden crab wobbling as if it were drunk. Hansen was overjoyed, going up to hit its head hard. The golden crab seemed to be dizzy from the hit. Its strikes were no longer organized or forceful. For several punches, Hansen had hit the head of the golden crab repeatedly. The yin force went deep, and the golden crab became even more dizzy. It could no longer stand straight and fell on the floor. Hitting madly on the crab shell with his fists, Hansen sent yin force into its head. Gradually, it stopped moving. Sacred blood creature Golden Pincer King killed. Beast soul of Golden Pincer King gained. Eat its meat to gain 0 to 10 sacred geno points randomly. Hearing the voice at last, Hansen felt overjoyed. He quickly checked the type of the beast soul of the Golden Pincer King. Type of beast soul of sacred blood creature Golden Pincer King Armor. Hansen summoned the beast soul and golden armor suddenly appeared on his body, covering him up completely. He looked lean and strong, full of power. At first sight, this armor and the black beetle armor were very similar. They were both golden armor that covered the whole body. However, their shapes were slightly different. The helmet of the Pincer King armor was clearly a golden crab. Eventually I have a sacred blood armor again. In the future, I will use the black crystal to turn it into a berserk sacred blood beast soul. At that time, I think not even sacred blood weapons could hurt it. Hansen was very happy. He was used to having sacred blood armor with him. When he came to Second God's Sanctuary, he had always wanted his armor, and this was his dream coming true. Putting the armor on, Hansen climbed on the boat and walked slowly into the cabin. After passing the hall, there were corridors and rooms inside everywhere. He did not encounter any other creature. However, Hansen could not find where the operating room was, so he had to summon Mermaid Princess. Mermaid Princess guided Hansen's way, and they soon reached the operating room, which was on the upper level of the crystal sailboat. Seeing the crystal rudder, Mermaid Princess cheered and grabbed it. The moment she grabbed the crystal rudder, Hansen felt the entire crystal sailboat was vibrating, making squeaking noises. Looking from the crystal window ahead of him, Hansen saw the weather was flowing and the sails rose. The entire sailboat was rising slowly. "My dear master, where do you want to go?" Mermaid Princess looked at Hansen, excited. The 3 sails rose at the same time. The mysterious and gorgeous crystal sailboat slowly rose from the bottom of the lake and floated in the water in a magical way, looking magnificent. "My girl, march toward the ocean." Hansen was incredibly excited. This crystal sailboat was much better than a submarine. It was an interstellar warship in the water. "Master, do you want to go above the surface?" asked Mermaid Princess. "No, let's march on the bottom." Naturally, Hansen would not let the crystal sailboat to go up to look for trouble. "Yes, master," replied Mermaid Princess and turned the rudder in her hand. The giant crystal sailboat suddenly sailed toward the ocean, following the channel connecting the lake and the ocean. The scenery at the bottom of the sea was indeed incredible. Hansen saw a region of shellfish, which piled up like small mountains for hundreds of miles. All kinds of corals were colorful and glamorous. Clusters of fish were playing games and millions in the ocean. Giant monsters that looked like dragons were passing by, making one's heart tremble. Luckily, the Crystal Palace was indestructible. Otherwise, if it were hit by the horrendous beast, it would be ruined before long. Boom boom. A dual-headed turtle that looked like a hill hit the Crystal Palace several times before it went away slowly. The number of the creatures inside the ocean was beyond Hansen's imagination. However, he did not know what the status of those creatures was. He could not hunt as he wished for that reason. In addition, Hansen wanted to check out first what the ocean had to offer. All kinds of sea creatures that he had never seen before were swimming. From afar, he seemed to see a red river flowing on the bottom of the sea. However, when he approached it, he found it was formulated by numerous red-shelled prawns, each as thick as a motorcycle. The creatures in the ocean were much more than the land. They were beyond Hansen's imagination. Many of them Hansen has never heard of before. Humans did not have the ability to hunt creatures in the ocean yet. This might be the first time for humans to hunt creatures in deep sea. However, because most of the sea creatures were huge in size, Hansen did not rush to hunt. He mainly came to check out the resources nearby first. After traveling for a few more days and eating many sea creatures, Hansen had gained a dozen mutant geno points, making his mutant geno points as many as 33. This day, he saw from afar that in the deep ocean, there was a huge city that looks like a gigantic beast crawling on the bottom of the sea. An underwater shelter. Hansen glanced at it from afar and commanded the Crystal Palace to turn around, not daring to approach the shelter. Judging by the size of the shelter, it was at least a royal shelter. Hansen was alone at this point and he was under the water as well. There was no way he could conquer the royal shelter. Because the royal shelter had blocked the way of the Crystal Palace, Hansen could only try to sail to the side. However, the water became more and more shallow and it eventually reached the shore. Hansen glanced at the shore from afar and found many humans, out of his expectation. There was a castle next to the shore, which should be a human shelter, to Hansen's joy. The ice field was surrounded by ocean and blocked from other places by the royal shelter. There was no way for the ice field to contact the outside. However, now Hansen could drive the Crystal Palace and come out from the bottom of the sea. This was a great business route. If he used it well, it was easy to make money. Parking the Crystal Palace at the bottom of the sea, Hansen rode the silver eel to go out. He swam to the shore and planned to ask where he was at. However, when he approached the shore, he found it was different from he had imagined. The reason for there to be so many people was that they were trying to conquer the shelter on the shore. In front of the shelter, there were many creatures that looked like porcupines, covered in spikes, which could be shot like arrows. The humans charged several times but failed to break into the rain of spikes. Many people ended up getting hurt. In front of the group of porcupines, a giant 9 feet tall covered in black iron armor ran into the army of humans on a huge boar, holding a tower shield in one hand and a double axe in the other. There was no one among the humans who could do anything to him. The human evolver who looked quite fit and should have a fitness over 100 was slashing a long broadsword at the giant. However, all the strikes were blocked by the tower shield of the giant warrior, who was not hurt. With the rampage of the huge boar, no one could stop the double axe in the giant's hand. Hansen took a look at it and felt surprised. This seemed to be an aristocrat shelter, so the giant warrior should be an aristocrat spirit. The injuries were heavy in human army. As they were hesitating whether they should retreat, they suddenly saw a golden figure rushing toward the spirit shelter at an incredible speed. The group of porcupines bristled and shot spikes at the golden figure. A rain of spikes was flying toward him. Many people were nervous as they watched. They had suffered a lot from the spikes and knew how good they were. Even mutant armor could not fully block their penetration. There were at least 1,000 spikes shooting at the golden figure. The man will very likely be killed in the end. However, the golden figure did not stop at all and rushed into the spikes. The spikes hit him like a storm, making noises continuously. All the spikes that touched the golden figure were flicked away or broken, yet the golden figure was not hurt at all. He was still charging toward the spirit shelter at a high speed. Round after round of spikes did not affect the golden figure at all. The golden figure soon went into the porcupines. As he moved, he killed several porcupines already. The porcupines guarding the shelter suddenly became a mess, while the golden figure had rushed into the spirit shelter. Everything happened so fast. When the golden figure disappeared in the shelter, the army of humans then realized what had happened. As the porcupines were disorganized, humans started to charge with all they got. The spirit warrior riding the boar chased after him like crazy, but it was too late. When the spirit warrior came to the hall, the golden figure had already walked out of the hall, with a glowing gem in his hand. Thump! When the spirit warrior came to the golden figure, he did not launch a suicidal attack toward the man as people expected. Surprisingly, it kneeled in front of the golden figure. Mad Shield is willing to give his master the purest soul, follow his master all his life, and never betray his master. Everyone felt astonished, seeing this incredible scene. It was so rare that a spirit would offer his allegiance. In addition, one should beat the spirit before the spirit offered his allegiance. However, the golden figure did not even fight the spirit warrior, yet the spirit gave his allegiance already. The chance that this would happen was probably less than 1 out of 10,000. Seeing the golden figure placing the spirit stone on the forehead of the spirit, people were almost blinded by the strong light of the stone. Then, both the spirit and spirit stone disappeared. Obviously, they had been taken back by their master. After the spirit was gone, the creatures in the shelter became a mess. The giant boar, which was the spirit's mount, roared and charged the golden figure. However, the golden figure did not try to dodge at all. The moment when the giant boar had come to his face, his fists covered in golden armor hit the boar. Facing the giant creature that were rushing over like armored vehicles, the golden figure simply took back his fist casually, while the giant boar suddenly had blood coming out of all the holes on its body, dying at the feet of the golden figure. Strong, he's too strong. Everybody gasped. Just now, when they were fighting outside, the humans had seen how strong the giant mount was. Even evolvers with a fitness index more than 100 could not face it head-on. However, the creature was killed by the golden figure with one strike. Dollar, he must be Dollar. Dollar is among us, someone suddenly exclaimed, making people having a chill. Yes, the golden armor, the invincible attitude. Who else could it be other than Dollar? Damn it. It turns out Dollar is here. Dollar is simply invincible, even in Second God's Sanctuary. Dollar, I love you. With Dollar here, we will never be afraid of the creatures. That punch is so badass. Hansen did not stay at all. After killing the boar, he jumped to the top of the palace and quickly left the shelter. He was basically stealing other people's spirit and felt too ashamed to stay. In terms of defense, Mad Shield was definitely the equivalence of a sacred blood creature. If it were not for the fact that the ghost pod claws were berserk, ordinary sacred blood weapons would be even less threatening to him. Unfortunately, he is not a pretty woman's spirit. Hansen felt ashamed. Initially, he wanted to form a gang full of pretty spirits. However, spirits were so rare that he might as well recruit some male spirits first. In the future, the Crystal Palace needed a lot of help on board in order to gain a huge amount of sea creatures. However, Hansen did not want to recruit too many humans, but preferred his own spirits. As he was thinking how he should make use of his current resources, he suddenly heard a crack in his Sea of Soul, which made Hansen feel happy. He looked to his Sea of Soul and saw the light cocoon of the golden growler had broken. The golden growler that was all golden and shiny came out of the cocoon. It seemed that its body had turned into gold completely, like a gold statue, looking much stronger. Berserk Super Creature Golden Growler Mount. The Berserk Golden Growler had enhanced greatly in both speed and strength. It could even be compared to the Sacred Blood mounts in Second God's Sanctuary. In addition, its ability to change size was something that an ordinary Sacred Blood mount did not have. As he fed the black crystal to his beast souls, Hansen ordered Mermaid Princess to take the Crystal Palace to the ice field. Because the resources were rich near Yellowstone Sea, beast souls were relatively cheap in that area. If he wanted to sell his beast souls, he should go back to Goddess Shelter to get a good price. His journey was quite smooth. The Goddess Shelter was surrounded by the ocean in 3 directions. Therefore, it was easy to get to the sea near the shelter. He did not encounter other shelters under the water, and he saved himself the trouble of traveling through the mountainous region. On his way back, Hansen hunted a large number of primitive creatures and some mutant creatures he found in the water, put them on the back of the golden growler, and returned to Goddess Shelter. When people in the shelter saw the golden growler and mountain of meat, they were all surprised. There were less and less creatures that they could hunt nearby, so they had never imagined a scene like this. Hearing the news, young Manly also came by. Seeing the huge pile of creatures, she was also dazed. Manly, count the meat and you can decide how to sell them. Hansen then transferred all the primitive beast souls and mutant beast souls he had gained to young Manly, asking her to sell them all. Young Manly saw the dozens of beast souls that Hansen transferred to her, many of which were not only mutant, but also berserk, which made her feel quite incredulous. Where did you get the meat and beast souls? Young Manly looked at Hansen with a complicated expression. I hunted them from the sea. Hansen knew that the creatures looked like they were from the ocean and there was no way he could hide it. The sea. Young Manly became even more surprised. It was much harder to hunt in the sea than on the land. I'm such a guy that could kill the tiger on the mountain and dragon in the sea. Isn't it absolutely normal for me to be able to hunt in the ocean? No need to look at me like that, Hansen smiled and said. Young Manly did not want to smile. Although Hansen was joking, she understood that the difficulty of the task was no joke. How did he achieve that? Young Manly felt it was more and more difficult for her to understand Hansen. When she was in First God's Sanctuary, she felt Hansen was inferior to Dollar. However, after they met in Second God's Sanctuary, what Hansen did astonished her every time. At this moment, Young Manly no longer had the thought she first had. She only felt it was more and more difficult for her to know Hansen. She did not know what kind of guy he was. Hansen, aren't you interested in the ancient language? An expert in that area has come recently. If you're interested, you could go see him. Hearing Jai Yanran's words, Hansen was immediately excited. He quickly asked, which ancient language expert? Why would we have one here? Jai Yanran smiled and said, Professor Zhu is very talented in linguistics. Also, he is quite a celebrity in the Alliance. Besides ancient language, he has studied a lot of languages from other species. If he is famous, will he ignore me if I just go see him? Asked Hansen. I don't think so. The management asked him to come over to teach us some knowledge about crystallizers. You could go and have a look first. Hansen was naturally very interested in the ancient language. He now could read everything in Dongshuan Sutra, but it did not mean he could understand them. Hansen still did not understand many parts, and he did not want to practice the martial arts before he understood what was going on. When it was time for the lecture of Professor Zhu, Hansen went to attend. The language of crystallizer was too complicated. In other words, they were not even words, but more like images. All sorts of complicated lines were put together to make an image that looked like the inner structure of a machine. It was indeed very difficult to learn the meaning. Even with Hansen's brain, which had been strengthened, he felt it was difficult to memorize those images. The other soldiers felt even more painful. When they went to the lecture, they felt like they were not understanding anything. Although it was very difficult to learn, Hansen was still paying attention to the lecture and tried to memorize. After Professor Zhu's lecture, Hansen quickly walked to the professor and saluted to him. Professor Zhu, I have a question regarding other languages that I want to ask you. I wonder if you have the time. Professor Zhu was a general in terms of military ranks, which was much higher than Hansen's. However, Professor Zhu did not have any power. Is it about the crystallizers? Tell me about it. Professor Zhu was quite easygoing. I want to ask you something about the ancient language of the Alliance, Hansen said. Professor Zhu looked Hansen up and down in surprise and asked, You have studied the ancient language. Currently, although the Alliance did not put less emphasis on liberal arts, many young people were more willing to spend time on practicing hyper-geno arts. After all, that would bring them direct benefits. Professor Zhu did not know whether Hansen had really learned the ancient language or he was just trying to kiss the professor's ass. I have studied a little bit. However, I have many confusions and there are not enough materials for me to clear them, said Hansen. All right, it is about lunchtime. Let's work together and we can chat in the cafeteria. Professor Zhu was not arrogant at all. If Hansen was indeed interested in the ancient language, Professor Zhu would like to answer his questions. After chatting with Professor Zhu for a long while, Hansen felt he was inspired. The materials he got from Professor Zhu were also a great help to him. For the things that he couldn't understand before, he had managed to perceive them after reading Professor Zhu's materials. After that, when he read Dongshuan Sutra again, he had many new understandings. Although there were still places that he did not understand, he had a more profound grasp of the text. If he could practice well, he could make his force to penetrate a large object. It was a bit exaggerating to say he could hit the bull behind the mountain, but it would not be difficult for him to penetrate through a steel plate of several feet thick. When he had rested for more than 10 days, eating golden crab every day in the shelter, he had eventually finished eating the crab and gained 7 sacred geno points. Currently, Hansen had 28 sacred geno points. Hansen, super body, king spirit. Status, evolver. Lifespan, 300. Requirement for next evolution, 100 geno points. Geno points owned, ordinary geno points 100, primitive geno points 100, mutant geno points 43, sacred geno points 28. Checking his progress, Hansen felt the number was quite good for someone who had entered Second God's Sanctuary for less than a year. Currently, Hansen's fitness index had definitely passed 120. It took a test for him to find out the exact number. Anyway, he was much stronger than Tiger of Blue Blood in the past now. I will go kill the Berserk Gargoyle first. Hansen entered God's Sanctuary again, making up his mind to go to the nest. Sacred blood beast souls were still very attractive in Hansen's eyes. In addition, the beast souls from the eggs were normally very good and of rare types. When Hansen was at the nest again, he summoned all his beast souls. For the time he spent in the Alliance, the Golden Pincer King had already been evolved into a berserk sacred blood beast soul, and the golden armor looked even better at this point. The gargoyle glyph had also been summoned. The desert bird was hovering over his head, enhancing all the beast souls further. Hansen felt he had enough strength to blow up a planet. Of course, that was only an illusion. The silver berserk gargoyle quickly rushed toward him. Hansen did not dodge this time, blocking the gargoyle's arm with his ghost pod claws. Bang! The claws in the arm of the gargoyle suddenly clashed, leaving a new long injury on the gargoyle's arm. Silver blood suddenly started to flow. Hansen stepped half a step back. His strength was no weaker than this berserk creature. The gargoyle roared fiercely, trying to grab Hansen with its claws, its nails looking like silver daggers. Hansen was not weaker than it in terms of either strength or speed. In addition, his footwork was much better than the creature's, so there was no way Hansen would let it grab him. As he swayed, not only had he dodged the attacks, but he had also managed to leave scratches on the gargoyle, making it bleed. The gargoyle roared angrily, but it could do nothing to Hansen. It could not even touch Hansen's body because Hansen's kiting skills were so good. As Hansen was feeling content, the gargoyle suddenly scratched at him. Just when he dodged the attack, the arms of the gargoyle suddenly gained 2 inches and still clawed at him. The 10 nails looking like silver daggers suddenly hit Hansen's armor. Ding! The sound of metal made people's ear hurt. However, the nails that looked like daggers did not manage to penetrate the armor, but only left some shallow marks on it. Hansen was more than surprised. Berserk golden armor and berserk gargoyle glyph combined, the defense was incredibly strong. Even the berserk gargoyle did not manage to hurt him. This strike gave Hansen more confidence. He took back the ghost pod claws and hit the gargoyle with his fists. Boom boom. His fists were thrown, and legs were dancing. His fists hit gargoyle, making it step back continuously. The gargoyle was overpowered by Hansen and killed by Hansen in the end using the yin force. Berserk sacred blood creature inferno gargoyle killed. No beast soul gained. Meat inedible. Hansen was dazed. It was the first time he encountered such a result. There was no beast soul or meat. Luckily, Hansen did not mind. There was an egg, which 100% would produce a sacred blood beast soul. In his hand, it was the same as a berserk sacred blood beast soul. What sacred blood beast soul should it be? I would prefer a pair of wings, or a beast soul add-on like the devil sword. Hansen climbed up the cells carefully, looking inside. There were many cells at this place. However, as he went deeper, he did not see any other creatures. It seemed that the gargoyle was the only creature there. Is there not an egg? Hansen became a bit worried. Luckily, very soon he saw the egg, making him feel relieved. Walking up to the egg, Hansen broke it with the claws and heard the familiar voice, producing beast soul. Hansen saw a piece of fog coming out of the egg, which gradually became a beast soul in front of him. The beast soul looked like it was made of tungsten. It looked like a tiger or a panther, with a horn looking like a lightning bolt. The creature had wings on its back. As it blinked, it looked incredibly fierce. The beast soul turned into a light, entering Hansen's sea of soul. He suddenly heard a voice. Beast soul produced. Sacred blood beast soul nightmare gained. Hansen quickly looked at the information of nightmare and saw it was a flying beast soul. He summoned nightmare and suddenly had a huge pair of tungsten devil wings on his back, looking rather cool. Hansen tried its speed and found it was much faster than the sacred blood wings from First God's Sanctuary indeed. He almost reached the exit of the nest immediately. Haha, I can fly again eventually. Hansen was overjoyed. With the ability to fly, it would be easier for him to do a lot of things. The sacred blood wings should be fast enough in Second God's Sanctuary. Without hesitation, Hansen fed the black crystal to Nightmare. Berserk sacred blood wings should be the fastest humans had ever seen in Second God's Sanctuary. With Nightmare wings, unless he had encountered a super creature, Hansen could be the king of Second God's Sanctuary. It will be even better if I have sacred blood bow and arrow. Then, I could go back to the top and look down on the entire Second God's Sanctuary. Hansen felt it was a pity that the sacred blood bow and arrow beast souls were hard to find. He came to the Starwheel shelter again. Hansen, I eventually found you. I have made an agreement with Black God and Philip. We will attack the royal shelter in a couple of days. Come and help me, will you? Wise England said excitedly. I am afraid I have to let you down. I am the enemy of Black God, so it should be inconvenient for me to go with you. Hansen smiled and said, You are the one who injured Black God and stole the Snakefish King. Lies England suddenly remembered, looking at Hansen in surprise. It is no other than me. I don't think we should go together. When you started the fight, I will join you at that time, Hansen said. That'll do. However, you must stay careful. At that time, all the advanced fighters in Black God's shelter would be there. If Black God did anything to harm you, it would be hard for you to escape. I am in charge of attacking from the west. You could go to my side. Lies England pondered and said, who is the one in charge of attacking the main gate? Hansen asked. Black God is the strongest, so he's doing that. After Hansen asked about a few more details, he got up to leave. However, he had made up his mind to go to the main gate where Black God would be. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and enable notifications so you don't miss the next chapter.